Most cat introduction advice starts with a closed door. But what if that door is actually part of the problem? A new 2025 owner-reported study published in Applied Animal Science Behavior suggests that many cats' isolation doesn't reliably reduce stress, and in some cases stress remains elevated rather than settling. Today we're going to look at what cats think is happening behind that door, and I'll show you a simple decision flow to see whether your cats might actually do better without the full isolation. To understand why isolation can sometimes backfire, we have to ask a simple question. What information does a cat actually have during a closed-door introduction? Most of the time, it's limited to scent and sound, and we often assume that's enough, but for cat smell without the visual confirmation doesn't automatically mean future housemate. It just means something unfamiliar is present inside their territory. So the door doesn't just slow the introduction, it can keep a cat in a prolonged state of uncertainty. One insight from the data is that the visual access may reduce how much a cat has to guess about what's going on. When cats can see each other, they can read posture, they can see movement, and they can tell whether the other cat is avoiding them, relaxed, or threatening. The survey data suggests that for many cats, this added visual information is enough to downgrade the situation from an unknown presence to a known animal. Not a friend, just known. And for some cats, that shift appears to reduce stress enough to prevent escalation. Now, before we talk about which cats this is best for, we need to reset what a successful introduction actually looks like. There's another insight from this data that helps explain why faster introductions can work for some cats. And that is because for many cats, most friendly relationships don't start with affection right off the bat. They start with indifference, and that leads into tolerance. We all know cats are extremely sensitive to each other's body language. When two cats can see each other and repeatedly choose not to interact directly, but still stay within the same vicinity, that's not avoidance, it's how they figure each other out. Indifference in this context is a signal of non-threat. Looking away, walking past, or settling down in the same space. What the data actually points towards is that visual access allows cats to exchange these neutral signals early. So they're not forced into guessing. They're able to read what's actually happening or not happening. A solid door interrupts that process. And while we're clearly not cats, it does make some sense that if someone shows up uninvited at your door and you never open it, you're left guessing. Is it your grandmother, or is it somebody who shouldn't be there? With limited information, your brain doesn't settle, it stays alert. Instead of learning that the other cat is predictable and non-threatening, both cats remain hyper-focused on sounds and smells without resolution. So when we redefine success as comfortable indifference, a lot of introductions that seem underwhelming are actually progressing exactly as they should. Now, this is where I want to slow things down a little bit. I've shown non-isolation cat introductions on this channel for a long time, and a lot of people have seen success using my strategies. But stories alone don't tell us who this works for or why. That's why this study caught my attention. In the survey, cat owners were asked how they introduced a new cat. Whether they used a closed door, allowed early access, i.e. non-isolation, or did something in between, and what happened afterward. Most people expected the slow, gradual closed-door introductions to work better, but the survey didn't show a clear advantage for that approach. In fact, in some situations, households that used strict isolation reported more ongoing stress, particularly when an older or more territorial resident cat was involved. At the same time, younger cats were actually more likely to react with increased hissing or chasing. But those reactions were more likely to settle down when the cats could see each other earlier. Again, this wasn't a lab experiment, it was an owner-reported survey from the University of Copenhagen. So it doesn't prove cause and effect, but it does show patterns across a lot of real homes. One of the clearest patterns was age. Cats under about 5 years old were more likely to handle earlier visual access, not because they're better behaved, but because younger cats tend to be more flexible. Older cats can still do well with faster introductions, they just tend to need closer observations and more adjustments. That doesn't mean younger cats are always safe to rush, and it doesn't mean that older cats can't adapt. It means age changes the level of risk. So this isn't about replacing the slow method, it's about choosing a starting point that fits the cats right in front of you. So if we take a step back from the rigid methods and look at the patterns instead, a different way of thinking about introductions starts to emerge. Think of these less as rules and more as where you should usually start. What really shifts the starting point is the age mix between the cats being introduced. When both cats are relatively young, starting without strict isolation tended to work more often. Not because those cats are guaranteed to get along, but because they're usually flexible enough to recover quickly from uncertainty. For them, long periods of separation can sometimes create more frustration than the meeting itself. When a younger cat is introduced to an older one, the picture becomes more mixed. Faster introductions can still work, but they benefit from closer observation. The younger cat often adapts quickly, while the older cat's response tells you whether to keep going, pause, or add more structure. In these cases, success depends on how well you're reading the cats and adjusting your approach. Now, when both cats are older than 5, especially if they're set in their routines, starting with isolation is often the lower risk option. That said, faster introductions aren't impossible. They just leave less room for error and require a good ability to recognize early stress signals. For some households, the slow method is just simply the safer place to begin because it has the most control. The important shift here is that none of these are guarantees. They're starting assumptions that you adjust based on what the cats show you. And that's where the decision framework comes in. So here's how to think about what you're seeing. If your cats are showing some signs of indifference, maybe avoiding each other or just passing through the same place, that's usually a good sign. At that point, they've already decided that maybe the other cat isn't a threat, and it often makes sense to keep them together. If you see some chasing, hissing, or quick swats, that doesn't automatically mean things are going wrong. For many younger cats, this can be a short phase where they're figuring each other out as long as it doesn't escalate. But repeated lunging or physical fights that end up with fur and blood flying everywhere, that's when cats are over the threshold, and full separation is the safer reset. There's one important boundary to put around what this study does and doesn't tell us. This data shows patterns across real households, not controlled cause and effect. So a closed door doesn't automatically cause conflict, but the data suggests that it can add stress for some cats. What this study really gives is perspective. It shows that cats respond very differently to the same introduction rules, and that's why no single method works for everyone. The takeaway isn't to abandon the slow, gradual approach, it's to stop treating any one method as universal. So use this information as a guide. However, understanding why no isolation can work is only the half of it. Without the actual steps, when to pause, when to push boundaries, and which strategies to use to help facilitate that process, you're basically doing it blind. In this video, I walk you through the full no isolation introduction process from start to finish so you're not guessing at any stage. You can watch it here in this video popping up.